Welcome back. I'd like to share with you a new story. It's an amazing story. The title of this story is A Picnic in the Forest. Listen carefully. It was evening. The sun was going down in the sky, filling the forest with the radiance of green and gold. The birds called sleepily to one another in the trees. Small animals took refuge in their holes, and all good people went quietly to their homes, tired but happy after the long day's work. Peace and tranquility were everywhere supreme, or nearly everywhere. Three men only in all that region were not so peacefully occupied: Sam, Pat, and Mike. These three were working slowly through the forest, looking very miserable indeed. Their coats were old, their hair was long, their shoes were full of holes. They had the pallid faces of men who live in big cities, and looked quite out of place in this rustic scene. As they worked, they looked continually about them, as if unknown enemies were waiting for them behind the trees. "Sam," said Mike unhappily. "Listen, Sam." "Yes, what is it?" "I've had enough of this working, working, working. How much longer must we keep on going?" "I don't know, Mike. Why don't we stop here, by that tree, over there, the one with the big hole in it? It looks all right to me." "Good," said Mike. "Fine," said Pat, "and not a bit too soon. This working is killing my foot. I told you, boys, I couldn't go another 100 yards. Not for $1 million. I couldn't." So the three vagabonds threw themselves down under the tree to rest. There was silence for a few minutes. Then Mike began again. "Sam, now what?" "That's just what I was going to ask you. Now what? What are we going to do now that we can't go back to town? I'm sure the police have sent messages about us to all the villagers near here." All right," replied Sam. "Give me time, can't you? Just give me time. I'll think of something. Don't I always find the way out of our difficulties?" "Well, yes, Sam. Pat and I were not so clever as you. But you know, Sam, that last idea you hadn't was not so good. Here we are now, in this forest, with no meal, not a penny in our pockets, and no idea where our next meal is coming from." Finished Pat. "What I want to know is when do we can eat, and what?" "Listen, boys," said Sam. "Just leave it to me, will you? I'll find a way out of this. Just wait and see. Again there was silence, and this time no one spoke for half an hour. Then suddenly all three were woken from their thoughts, or from their sleep, by a shower of rain. "That's all we needed," said Mike miserably. "The end of the perfect day." "It's not enough to be tired and hungry," said Pat. "We have to be wet too." But Sam was more practical. "Come on, you two. Let's go into the hole in this tree. It's not very big, but it's dry." He went into the hole, and Mike and Pat followed. It was a dark night in the tree, but Sam was right. It was dry. Pat took the end of a candle from his pocket and put a match to it. They saw that they were in something like a small room. The floor was covered with leaves and little sticks. The work, the walls were hard and blank, for the tree was very old. Here and there on the walls they could see things written, words and names, cut into the tree with a knife by other people. Words and name cut into the tree. Who had taken refuge here? "Nothing interesting here," said some. When they had finished their inspection, "But wait a minute, what's this?" He grasped the candle from Pat's hand to look at something cut into the wall, down near the floor. "Hi now," he exclaimed. "This begins to look good. What is it, then?" "Tell us what it says." "Listen, boys, just listen to this. If three true friends should find this gold, they'll be rich men till they are old. But if the friends are untrue ones, not one of them will see two suns." Now that, do you think of that? "I just don't understand a word of it," said Pat. "What does it mean?" "Never heard anything like it," said Mike. "Two suns? The only time I saw two suns is when I've had too much to drink." "I've never met a more ignorant pair," exclaimed Sam. "What's so difficult about it? Two suns means 2 days, 2 mornings, that's all. But I'm not interested in that. Didn't you listen, boys? I says gold, gold. If you ask me, we only have to look somewhere near the message, and we'll find enough money to open a bank." "Money," repeated Pat and Mike. "Come on, boys. Why are we waiting?" Without another word, the three men went down on their knees and began to pull away the leaves and sticks. They worked furiously and soon made a large hole in the floor. Suddenly Sam stopped and looked at his hand. "Look, boys, I've cut it on something. Come on. There is something this hole, that's certain." He was quite right. A few moments later, the vagabonds uncovered a large metal trunk and pulled it out of the hole. not without difficulty, for the trunk was very heavy indeed, and when they opened it, they soon saw why. It was full of gold dollars. For some seconds they stood in silence. They could not believe their eyes. "Sam," said Mike at last, "how much do you think is there?" "Sam, $1,000. $1,000? There is a lot more than that. Or my name is not Sam Shark. The problem is, boys, how do we get it out of here? We can't just walk into a strange town with a box full of gold. People will start to talk and ask questions, and then we'll really be in trouble. No, we've got to think. "Can't we carry it in our pockets?" asked Mike. "How much do you think we could carry?" "About $500, that's all. And leave all the rest here, with nobody to take care of it." "No, Mike, that's not good. Someone may come along and find it. We must think of some way to take it all at once." "Listen, Sam," said Pat after a time. "I think I have an idea." "You have an idea?" repeated Sam, a little annoyed. He always liked to solve their problems himself. "Well, what is it?" "I'll go into town, get some strong sacks, find a car somewhere, and come back here with it. Then we can put the gold in the sacks and the sacks in the car and get away from here with no trouble." "What do you mean, go into town?" said Sam. "We can't show our faces back there, and you know it. Not after last night's affair. They know us too well." But Pat persisted. "They know you boys all right, but they don't know me. It was dark, you know, when you did the job, and I stayed outside in the street all the time. I'm quite sure nobody saw me. I'm not afraid to go back." Sam thought for a few seconds. "You know, Pat," he said at last, "I think there is something in your idea after all. What do you say, Mike?" "It looks all right to me." "Fine then. Go into town in the morning, Pat. Get some sack and the biggest car you can find and hurry back. Mike, I will wait here for you, and take care of the gold while you are gone. Boy, oh boy, just think of what we can do. All this money when we get to a new town. New suit, cars, whiskey, everything we need." So they slept for a few hours, and next morning, when the sun came up, Pat put some money in his pocket, left his friends, and went back to the town. Sam and Mike sat down by the tree to pass the time till he returned. "I know what we can do," said Sam. "Let's divide the gold in three parts. Then we can see how much each of us will get." "That's a good idea," replied Mike. So they started work. It took them a long time to divide the money, and when they had done it, they were a little disappointed by the results. Each had expected to receive much more. They said nothing, but looked at the three piles for some time in silence. Then, still without a word, the two friends began to take a little gold from Pat's pile and put it on their piles. In a few minutes, Pat's pile had been reduced to nothing. At last, Mike said slowly, "It looks bigger when it's divided just two parts. Don't you think, son?" "It certainly does, Mike. Much bigger." They sat there a moment more in silence. Then Sam began again. "I'd like to divide it in this way, wouldn't you, Mike? Just me and you. Our trouble would be over for good." "But Sam, what about Pat? He will want his part too. After all, he has been with us all the time and through this affair." "I know he has, Mike, but what has done?" "Just tell me that. What has he done?" "He said himself that he stayed out in the street. He wasn't going to take any risks. Not Pat. And now what? He can walk back into that town as free as a bird, and no one will put an end on him. If you want to know what I think." "You're quite right, Sam," said Mike. "I never looked at it in that way before." "Yes, of course, you're right. We should Why should we all the work do all the work and take all the risks, and then get no more for our trouble than Pat, who did nothing? But of course, Pat won't be counted with less than the rest of us." "I know, Pat." "Maybe," replied Sam slowly, "maybe we won't ask for this permission. Maybe we won't consult him about it. Maybe we—" "You mean?" "Yes, I see. I thought you wouldn't understand. Listen, Mike, what could be easier? Out here in the forest, nobody to see us. Pat will bring us the sack and the car. Then, when we've done what is necessary, you and I will live together without him. Nobody will know a thing. When we've done what's necessary," Mike looked at his friend with admiration. "You've got a good idea. You've got a good head on you, Sam. You've got the answer to everything. It's not a difficult problem, Mike. Now listen. This is how we will do it." And some minutes passed while Sam told Mike of his scheme. It was late in the afternoon when Pat finally arrived back from town. He came through the forest driving a fine, large, open sports car. He was dressed in a new blue suit, green hat, red and yellow tie, white shoes. So vivid a combination of colors had never been seen in the forest before. The birds and animals took one look at the apparition and hurried away in horror. "Just look at him," exclaimed Mike. "He spent his part of the money already. What a suit!" "That's all right, my boy," smiled Pat. "You can get one just as good when you go to town. I've got the sack, Sam, in the car here, and here is the food. Meat sandwiches, enough for a regiment, and some hot coffee. Pat got out of the car and began to pull out the packets of sandwiches. Then he turned to his friend. Here you are, boys. In that instant, the smile left Pat's face. In horror, he looked at Sam's revolver. It was pointing directly at him, less than a yard away. Sam, what are... Pat never finished his sentence. The noise of the revolver echoed through the forest, and his eyes closed for the last time. Well, said Sam, that's a good job done. Now, Mike, let's get busy. Put the gold into the sack. Then we can eat and get away from here. It's better to drive at night till we get a good distance from the town. Half an hour later, the work was completed and the sacks had been put into the car. When everything was ready, the two men went back into the tree and sat down to eat. There is nothing like a good meat sandwiches when a man's hungry, said Mike. And this meat looks like the best stick to me. You are right, Sam answered. Let's have some of that coffee, Mike, before it gets cold. He took the coffee and looked about him. There is only one cup here, Mike. You take it. I think I saw another cup in the car. I'll go and get it. It won't be a minute. And indeed, in less than a minute, Sam was back at the entrance of the hall. But the thing in his hand was not a cup. Before his friend could say a word, the noise of a revolver again disturbed the evening peace of the forest, and Mike's troubles were over. Then Sam sat down again to finish the sandwiches. Every now and then he drank a little coffee from the cup. Peculiar coffee, he murmured, but good, nice and strong. Sam was still sitting there the next morning when the sun came up, and he was still sitting there a week later when the forest guard passed that way. The guard looked at the big sports car and the sacks of gold and then at Pat's corpse. Then he went into the hole in the tree. He looked at Mike and Sam for a moment and then examined the coffee cup. It was still half full. Arsenic, he exclaimed. This was a nice picnic. This was. And this is the story. Hopefully you like it. Thank you for watching. See you soon.